The same way that I can get excited about like an Arch Manning who has not played a lot of football, the same way I can get excited for Ty Simpson. No better way to not make you wait, to not make you sit here throughout an entire 30-minute show than to dive in to the SEC to the fullest extent as possible. With the SEC, in my opinion, this is the best conference in all of college football for a very simple reason. When we're talking about the SEC, compared to like the Big Ten, to my only opinion that it is the only competitor in terms of the best college football conferences. The SEC has a tier 2. In the most simple way possible, the SEC has a long list of teams that if you were to tell me that Missouri knocked off one of the contenders, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Florida, teams that I would classify as that tier 2, I would not be shocked. But if you were to go to the Big Ten and tell me that, I don't know, some of like a Nebraska knocked off Ohio State, Nebraska knocked off Penn State, USC knocked off one of those top teams, I would feel shocked because that tier 2 is just not as strong or definitive in the Big Ten. It's the only thing that I think is holding itself back, unless they just keep winning national titles, from definitively being the best conference in all of college football. But we're not talking just about the Big Ten versus the SEC. We're talking about the 2025 season and what to expect. Let's talk about some of the contenders here. In my eyes, it's about 4 teams that I can definitively say I think are going to win the SEC this year. Alabama, in my opinion, is not going to be ranked number 1, and they're just one of the contenders. Alabama, in my eyes, is a definitive SEC title contender, and it wouldn't shock me if they are the number 1 team in this conference for a multitude of reasons. Kalen DeBoer just wins football games. That's just something that I can stamp. The same way that we go with Indiana, Google me, I just win football games. Yeah, you could do the exact same thing for Kalen DeBoer at a very, very high level. They have arguably the best offensive line in the entire country, who could improve and get better. We have Ty Simpson at quarterback, which I understand a lot of people are not going to be as excited about a Ty Simpson as the electric Jalen Milroe, who had his ups and downs. And that's what I think held them back in this offense extensively last year. There's no way around it. Ty Simpson with a great system around him, a great offensive mind, a guy who is going to just have to put the ball in playmakers' hands. And when we talk about these playmakers, there's Ryan Williams. There's Prentice. There's so many pieces on this offense. I could continue and keep going that it almost seems like a no-brainer. The same way that I can get excited about like an Arch Manning who has not played a lot of football, the same way I can get excited for Ty Simpson, because I know the situation and the play calling around him is going to put him in the best position to succeed. Mind you, both of them are 5 stars. Now, one has been in the college game a lot longer than the other, but neither have played a lot of football, and both of them are 5 stars. Just one of them has the Manning name and a lot of expectations behind him, and you're kind of playing with house money with a guy like Ty Simpson. But speaking of Texas, Arch is extremely interesting, and Texas in general is a SEC title contender once again, to no surprise. One of the best programs in terms of talent acquisition, one of the best programs in just setting themselves up to succeed year in and year out. Sarkisian is a head coach that is going to perennially keep his team in the space of a national title until he wins one at Texas. But is it going to happen in 2025? I think that's the question you have to ask, because they are once again refreshing a lot. Now, Texas fans will instantly tell you that they are very much in the space of, we had these guys already. We're not bringing in an entire transfer portal class to fix all of our problems. That's just not what Texas is doing. But it's a lot of unproven talent. It's a lot of names that, unless you're within the space or the state of Texas, you may not know these names yet. There's concerns about the offensive line because of that. You don't know their 1 through 5 off the top of your head. Like you knew a Kelvin Banks, like you knew some of the guys that went to the NFL, guys like Jake Majors, all these guys that you definitively knew last year to help support a guy like Quinn Ewers. you don't know them as they're going to support Arch Manning. You know Arch because he's the topic of the town. The defense is going to be great. If there was one concern I had with the defense, it's going to be refreshing that interior defensive line for back-to-back seasons. But like I said, Texas, they continue to refresh. They haven't earned that just blind faith that we had with like the Clemson and the Alabamas of the world in the 2010s, but they are going to be just fine. I think you could say Georgia. Georgia's just going to be in that space and definitively contending because it's Kirby Smart. If you were to tell me Kirby Smart and his team in 2024 were in the hundreds of running the damn ball, I would have called you crazy. But I like Georgia. It's just, you're going to have the talent acquisition. You're going to have a head coach that knows their weaknesses and their strengths. And they won the SEC championship last year in what felt like a down year. Now they're not quarterback centric like they were with Carson Beck. Now they have pass catchers that should be able to catch the damn football. Sure, they're replacing a lot in the defense, but I love some of the pieces they have. There's some guys, there's a transfer from, I believe, Army that is going to be a household name. I would stamp it. I would book it, do whatever you need to do, but I would guarantee you that he ends up being a household name. I would also say LSU. Now, LSU is the one that you're going to have the most pushback for. LSU's in my SEC title game. I think LSU is very much set up for success this upcoming year because they have to. There's another gear with college coaches when they know they're under pressure, when they know that they're under the line of fire. And Brian Kelly is that. LSU is a pressure cooker. If you are not winning national titles at LSU and you're going 9-3, 8-5, that's not good enough. That's never going to be good enough for LSU. And Brian Kelly, you could put up all these great stats with guys like Jaden Daniels. You could put up these great offenses. You can have these moments where you go to an SEC championship game in your first year, but it's not enough because you're not contending for national titles. So they made a pivot. And the definitive moment was when they lost Bryce Underwood. They were struggling in the NIL space. People will tell you time and time again, LSU was not at the front runner position of a great NIL program. And when they lost to Michigan on what was basically a buyout, Michigan forced LSU to get it all together in the lightest way I can put it. And they ended up pulling an incredible transfer portal class. Garrett Nussmeier comes back, Caden Durham, and the commitment to running the football is the huge key for them. Because if they are able to run the football, and if this defense takes the step that I think it should, people forget that they were DBU pretty definitively, at least in my eyes. And they have completely fallen off a cliff. I mean, one of the worst secondaries in the SEC for the past couple of years. That should take a step forward based on the talent that I have evaluated and have looked at for this LSU program. They should get better. And we'll find out week 1 against Clemson in what they call Death Valley. My opinion is LSU is Death Valley, but to each their own. That goes to my next point. When we talk about the kings of the SEC, the top contenders, you got to have the best player in that space. I would be shocked if, someone that wasn't a contender in the SEC didn't also have one of the best players. We could talk about DJ Lagway. We could talk about Lenore Sellers, Marcel Reed, all these different players that could be the best player on their team and potentially the best player in their conference. But to me, it's going to be Garrett Nussmeier. When evaluating Nuss in 2024, it was an up and down roller coaster. Everyone will tell you he was throwing picks. He was forcing the ball into harm's way. We're talking about a quarterback that is a true gunslinger, a dying breed in the world of quarterbacks. But there's those moments that I have to hold on to. He is a coach's son. His coach goes and currently works for the New Orleans Saints. He is a guy that has to play boring football, and it will completely change his game. And when I say boring football, what do I mean? A guy that's going to check down the ball, a guy that's going to play it safe sometimes, not put it in harm's way. And I think if Caden Durham takes a step forward and the rushing attack gets better, if he's able to check the ball down and not try to throw it over the middle every chance he has an opportunity to, 2 manageable fixes in an offseason, mind you. These are not leaps and bound jumps that he has to make. I don't think his accuracy is a problem. I don't think his arm strength is a problem. I don't think his processing is a problem. These are small tweaks that can be done in an offseason. And he's going to be in the spotlight time and time again at LSU. I think he is going to step up to the plate and be the best player in the SEC. But we have talked a lot about the contenders and some of the best players in this space, and understandably so. That's why people are very interested in what the SEC comes to provide. But who are the sleepers? Who are the dark horses in the quickest way possible? Because we have way too many teams to talk about. Texas A&M is an easy dark horse. You see the pennant behind me. I'm not going to harp on it too long because I could sit here for 20, 30 minutes on just this team. Texas A&M has the talent, and they're going to have a very high floor because they're bringing back two very dynamic running backs, probably one of the best running back rooms in the entire country. I would argue a top 5 offensive line, a returning quarterback, and the only question I have is this team's defensive line, Mike Elko's specialty. I feel good about that team. Florida is in desperation mode. Florida is a make or break program right now. After what Dan Mullen did to this program, you had Billy Napier fight and continue to trust his process. With a guy like DJ Lagway, it could all change this year, regardless of the schedule. And that is a big thing to say regardless to, because it is the most difficult schedule in the country. If it clicks, that schedule becomes way less difficult because instead of Florida being concerned of who they have to play, teams have to get worried about Florida being the team they have to play. And it completely changes the perspective of this team. They have the ceiling of winning the SEC. People are scared to say that. People don't want to say that. That's their ceiling, but their floor is also a 5-7 year. There's a lot of volatility that could happen with this program. But if we were to take away the history over the past couple of years and took away the schedule and you just looked at the roster themselves, Lagway, check. You know that's your superstar quarterback. Running back room, you feel real good about that. Wide receiver room, you feel good. Offensive line, veteran talent. And if you look at the seniority around this defense, the defense should be incredibly strong. I don't see a lot of gaps outside of my questions about the coaching. What's going to happen on Saturdays? What is going to potentially hold them back? And I look at it and I think it's the coaching. South Carolina is a team that has gotten a lot of hype this year. Let's pump the brakes on South Carolina. I understand. You go watch the very first snap of football against Clemson, and you're going to be hooked on Sellers. Rightfully so. You're going to watch the Netflix documentary, and you're going to completely believe that Lenore Sellers is the second coming of Cam Newton. And guess what? I'm not going to disagree with you. I think Lenore Sellers is incredibly talented, incredibly impactful with what he's able to create when nothing is there. My concern about South Carolina, the program, South Carolina, the team, is they lost a lot. And the play style that they're wanting Sellers for them to win football games could be very reliant on some magic. And in a conference like the SEC, in a schedule that brings, you're going to have some volatility. What happens when that magic doesn't come through? You're basically asking him to be Superman, something that we have not seen, funny enough, since 2011 against Cam Newton. You're going to run into some problems if that is what you're relying on. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have a pick there. You're going to have a fumble there. He can't just make magic out of nothing. Like, he is not the most polished passer. Point blank, period. End of statement. He can get better. He can process the field better, but that's not going to be a guarantee that he takes this Joe Burrow type of leap, which you can't rely on. You're relying on anomalies for this season to be a full-blown success, which I think they want a college football playoff spot. I just don't know if it's going to happen. The last team I want to talk about in terms of the SEC, before we move on, because we may have to make this into two parts just because the conference is so stacked at the end of the day, and we have the time to do so. So tune in on Sunday to see the rest of the SEC because I have plenty of thoughts, and then maybe next week we'll talk about the Big Ten. The last team I want to talk about is Joey Aguilar and the Tennessee Volunteers. Tennessee is in a very peculiar position this year. They lost Nico Iamaleava. I'm proud I got that name correct consistently. In the middle of their offseason. Year 2 quarterback in that specific system. You were really hoping that he could mitigate some of the problems that were there. Losing Dylan Sampson, losing a lot of good pieces on that defense. Jermod McCoy being their corner coming off of a torn ACL. There was a lot that you were hoping a year 2 quarterback could kind of play that Superman role. He's gone. Late into the offseason. And now you're bringing in Joey Aguilar, who has some really good moments. He is a true gunslinger. He's going to throw the football. But I don't know if he's the type of talent that can cover up those problems, man. If there's a team that I'm really low on this upcoming year, I know a lot of people are. I like their defense. I think they're going to be a team that you do not want to face, especially in Knoxville. You don't want to go to that stadium. Weird things happen in that stadium. But are they a team that originally went to a college football playoff and are hoping to potentially get back? I would be shocked if the Tennessee Volunteers made it to the college football playoff.